to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on April 17th, 2023. The first item on the agenda is roll call.
Deborah Meyerson here.
Sarah Bowerly-Dansman here.
Randy Cassidy here.
And Cindy Canarney here. Staff present.
John Zodi, Hand Department.
Christina Finley, Hand Department.
Beth Kay, Legal.
Larry Allen, Legal.
Jeff Underwood, Treasurer, Controller.
All right. Next item on the agenda is reading of the minutes for April the 3rd, 2023. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, I motion to approve the minutes from April 3rd, 2023.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is examination of claims for April 14th, 2023 for $180,151.17. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll offer a motion for the claims from April 14th, 2023.
And Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is examination of payroll registers for April 6th, 2023 for $32,383.62. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll second.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No one opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is report of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
There is, Madam President. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Just a couple of things coming down the pike. We will have some rehab resolution for you at the next meeting on May 1st. We are being sort of monitored by HUD this year for our home program and then for environmental reviews. So that's going to be a busy May, our next meeting, busy May for hand. Also, I know we may discuss it some during the meeting, but having had some continued activity on the Hopewell project with the owner's development rep, as well as the request for proposals. We did get some proposals back. I think President Canarney, I don't know if you want to update on that, your involvement in the RFI review as well. Don't know when you wanted to do that, but that's moving along as we speak. So happy to answer any questions.
I'll handle that under general discussion if
Great.
that works.
Sure.
All right. Anything else? Any questions from commissioners? If not, we'll move on to legal report.
No legal report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Is there a treasurer's report?
No report, happy to answer questions.
All right. Are there business development updates?
Hi everyone, Alex Crowley, Director of Economic and Sustainable Development. I'm going to turn it over to John Fernandez, but I very quickly just wanted to update you on the work that's being done at the 4th Street Garage commercial space, which is going to be housing Hoosier Fiber Networks. They're getting close to completing that work. There's the art exhibit that's still going on. If you haven't checked it out, please drop by. It's cool. It's cool. Randy's been, so I encourage everybody to go. And I will now turn it to John Fernandez, who's going to talk a little bit about the Trades District.
Is that the hot seat? That's the hot seat. Okay, great.
Mike.
Well, when I came to the commission a while back, I said I would try and come here regularly to keep you all up to date. So I just have a really super short update. I think you probably all know that last week the Common Council approved the additional appropriation ordinance along with an agreement to empower the mill to move forward on construction management consulting stuff. So I want to thank Beth and Jeff and Alex and everyone for helping us get through the council. I think that was a pretty important step for us. Now we can really move forward with some pace. We did have a competitive process for construction management services as well as a lead commissioning agent, which we are required to do to get the kind of certification that we're intending to do under the grant. You know, we're shooting for a minimum LEED silver. Hopefully we'll do better, but we'll see. But so we did make a selection. Weddle Brothers of Bloomington was selected to do the construction management agreement or as agent, and then a group called Applied Engineering out of Indianapolis is going to be doing the commissioning work. They're both, you know, I know most of you are pretty familiar with Weddle, and Applied Engineering is a really solid organization too. So we had great proposals, and we went with one that we thought was going to be not only the most economical, but you know, serve the best interests of our project. So we're excited about that. Had a good kickoff meeting today, by the way. Alex was there as well, bringing together the construction management group, the lead consultant, as well as our designers, Studio Access, and the BDC and the city were both there as co-applicants. So we're updating our schedule, and we'll have that cleaned up in the next couple of days, but we're moving forward. Our anticipated next milestone would be May 16th, when we should have our draft construction documents 100% complete and ready to go, subject to, you know, approval of EDA and everyone else. So good progress there. Just a couple other quick notes. Speaking of garages, we do have 2 proposals to do some preliminary design work for the commercial space on behalf of a prospective tenant that Alex has been working with. It's a great tenant. I can't wait to hopefully solidify that lease so that we can announce it. It'll be another good momentum builder for us. And then lastly, on the trades district itself, you know, we'll have to have a deeper, broader conversation about it. But there are a couple of things just as coming attractions to get on your radar. One is the need to update appraisals, because I think the last appraisals were in 2015, and they were completed as a single appraisal for the entire district. And what we are proposing is that we get appraisals for what are essentially the 4 remaining development opportunities. So that's in process as far as getting you know, the city staff some proposals that they can look at, because we will need that to go. The Redevelopment Commission should be the client for that, not the mill, for a number of reasons. So that's moving forward, and then at some point soon I'll want to have a conversation with the Redevelopment Commission about the covenants, conditions, and restrictions that were developed at the time of the TASIS agreement. And there's some good stuff in there. There's some challenges in there that we want to address, but that's TBD. So happy to answer any questions, but again, really appreciate the Redevelopment Commission's support and happy to answer any questions.
I had a quick question. Can you tell us and share a little bit more about the bid process and the selection of Weddle? Who was involved in that?
We had a committee that involved, you know, the city representatives, the BDC, and myself. So there were, you know, I think Alex and who else was part of that? Jen and our teams. So we.
And that contract is between the mill and, okay.
And Weddle.
Okay.
Yeah. Same thing with, you know, with the lead commissioning agents, we asked the architects for some recommendations, and we had a couple of really good proposals there as well, and could have went with either one, but we went with the one that was, you know, $9,000 less expensive. But they're both highly qualified teams.
Great.
Would you be in a position to provide your update also in a memo format? Just because I'm taking notes, but I prefer in a more cohesive format that you send.
And
We get to those new appraisals, which, like you said, would go back to the RDC. I will feel like I have something more solid to reference.
We'll definitely want to document all of that, and for sure. Yeah.
So just a memo update. Certainly, it's great to hear from you in person, but just that would help me with kind of having a more accurate record of what you're all updating us on.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sir? Quick question, John. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, putting together. Now, down to the dollar end, since we got it approved, how is that funding going to be allocated, not just from the redevelopment, but also the city council, so it's in the proper buckets to be dealt with?
That is a very, very good question, and one that is of immediate interest. Alex and I were just talking about that today, and we're going to meet with our legal team and get input from Jeff, because I think our preference is that we have a single process for how we, handle the construction bids, because that'll be a competitive process. And, I don't want to say too much because I don't know the answer to it, other than the fact that we were having a meeting this week to try and agree on it, the best path forward, so that we have the transparency and the accountability that is required and we would want to do anyway for the public funds. But we also don't want to overcomplicate where we have to be running like two different processes, because some of the dollars are TIF and some of the dollars are general fund, and I assume there's got to be a way to kind of integrate that, but I'll defer to Beth and Jeff and others to give us the right path forward.
Talk more about that?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just with the EDA involved also, it's like, okay, let's make sure we have it in place so it's simple, easy, and we know we've got a good path forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Appreciate the update. All right, on to new business. First item is Resolution 23-32, approval of mortgage and lien for the Trades District Tech Center. Who'd like to talk to us regarding that?
I'll do that. So Beth Kate, Corporation Counsel, good evening, Commissioners. So this is relatively straightforward. Basically, as the recipient of an EDA grant, we are subject to, and the RDC is subject to, various terms of the grant that track various federal regulations, and those include a requirement that we grant effectively a first lien to the EDA to secure for the useful estimated life, 20 years of the tech center, our compliance with the basic terms of the grant, which are really about our using the property for the project that we described to them when they gave us the grant funding. So what the EDA did was send us an agreement and mortgage that they have pre-approved, and that effectively tracks the regulations and the requirements for that mortgage and lien. And so what the resolution is doing is bringing that agreement and mortgage and the lien that it contains to you all for approval. And what would happen after approval is that we would record that mortgage and lien. I would send it back to the EDA with a cover legal opinion, basically saying it's all in order, it's been approved duly by the RDC, and that's a necessary requirement actually to move to the next steps in going ahead and bidding for contractors and things like that to go ahead and construct the Trades District Tech Center. So I'm happy to answer questions about the contents of it. Effectively, what it does is it says, you're going to use this money to build what you said you were going to build. You're going to take certain necessary steps to protect the title in the property that's being improved with the grant funds, and paying taxes and insurance and so forth. And if you don't, or if you transfer the property without our approval, et cetera, then we would have an immediate obligation effectively to repay the grant if you boil it down to its essence. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer questions, though, if you have any.
Two questions. One, based on the plat amendments and the other items that we've previously approved, from what we're giving up from a lien standpoint to the EDA on the mortgage, is that identified specifically so that we don't encumber the entire trades district out of it?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. So the way that the property is described in the attachment to the mortgage, I've run this by their counsel in Chicago, and I said this is just Lot 2A. It's basically just the lot on which the tech center is being built, and so yes, that's what's encumbered. Yeah.
There won't be anything else that we have to concern ourselves with in fact.
No, thank you for asking. Yeah.
And then, given the 20-year burn off on the grant, where it's at, and maybe I want to clarify some of the reading I had, the aspect that this is just 20 years, then it's just done. There's no burn off period or decreasing amount.
No, if I'm understanding your question correctly, The obligations that are reflected in the terms of this mortgage and lien, we have to continue to comply with those for the full 20-year estimated life. And so if we didn't, then that would trigger a repayment. So if you're asking, do we just repay less? Is there a depreciation? I think the answer is no, the way I read it.
My only question
So-
is that, if some catastrophic situation happened 18 years from now, if there was a time frame burn off of, it'd be, if it's a 20-year mortgage, and, I didn't see any provisions that said it decreases at all.
It doesn't, but what we can do is always go to the EDA and get their approval for whatever we would want to do at that point. So I think that's the kind of safety valve, if you will. Like if something radically changed or whatever, and suddenly we wanted to convey this to someone else, and then they would evaluate whether or not that was happening under terms that were consistent with their original obligation, but they'd have to approve it, but they could. So yeah, and then after that 20 years is up, then we request for that. It doesn't happen automatically, but we can go to them and request that effectively we retire this mortgage and lien, we wipe it off the books, and then the only things that will remain as long as the federal code provisions remain in place are there certain non-discrimination provisions that continue to run with it, and no religious use. So that's basically, those are the continuing obligations after that. Yeah.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Good, great questions.
So what mechanism do we have to acknowledge when that time period for request to have the mortgage release should occur?
So
is there a
like,
tracking
is there a
system?
tracker or
Yeah.
a tickler? That's a great question too. I think my immediate answer is I don't know the answer to that, but I think we should have one, and we'll have to figure out how to make one. Ironically, we were just talking, because we've just gone through a big document review in our office about things we can keep, things we can get rid of. And that has led to further discussion about tracking city properties and all of that, and kind of morphing a lot of resources into one place and getting that organized. So, so hopefully the answer will be there'll be a fantastic database which will be tracking all this, and we'll send out a tickler as we get closer. So that's the goal.
To kind of tag on to Randy's question, so in year 19, if we wanted to sell the property for whatever reason, we would have to most likely retire the $3.5 million.
Well,
Because the mortgage would stay in place for at least 20 years.
right, but I mean, I'm not sure I'm following in terms of retiring what you mean, because we could.
Well, we could sell the property, but we would have to repay the grant, right?
Unless we get EDA approval for
Yeah.
what we are looking to do. And I don't get the impression necessarily that they would use that provision in a way to extract the full grant amount at that time. If we had otherwise spent 19 years building the tech center, operating it, et cetera. So, yeah.
But there's no guarantee that they wouldn't want the $3.5 million in order to grant the mortgage release, because there's nothing in the mortgage that kind of spoke to that.
No, there isn't. No. It's a pretty heavy hand if you just look at the
Yeah.
black and white of the document, because they're trying to make sure that the grant is used for what they gave it for. So, and their estimated useful life is basically, we're funding this project to create this benefit for the community to last 20 years. So we want to get 20 years out of it. So, and if something changes, you have to come to us and see if we'll approve it.
And just my last point, if we want the $3.5 million, we have to sign the mortgage
Yeah.
in its entirety, right?
We've already
Yeah.
taken, yeah, right, we've signed already,
Okay.
but yes, you're absolutely right. We really don't have any negotiating room, and even they don't think they have negotiating room. They basically, sent us something which, again, largely just tracks the statutes and relevant regulations, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we need a motion?
Any other questions on Resolution 23-32? Are there any public comments? No? All right, I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 23-32.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 32, yes, whatever it is.
23-32, okay.
Yeah.
Sarah Bowerly Gansman, I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Resolution passes. Next item of business is Resolution 23-33, approval of neighborhood improvement grants. And I'm guessing I know who's been here to talk to us about this.
Yes, thank you. Angela Van Roy, Neighborhood Services Program Manager with HAND. So our neighborhood improvement grant total budget for 2023 was $30,000. Applications were received from 4 neighborhood groups. We had a neighborhood improvement grant council made up of 5 members who are Deborah Meyerson from the Redevelopment Commission, Nate Nickel from Public Works, Maria McCormick from Engineering, Sue Tui from the Crescent Bend Neighborhood Association, and Bram Boyd from the Grandview Hills Neighborhood Association. On Monday, April 10th, grant applicants presented their projects to the Neighborhood Improvement Grant Council in a public meeting. On Wednesday, April 12th, the Grant Council met to discuss each project and determine funding recommendations. Based upon those deliberations, the Neighborhood Improvement Grant Council hereby recommends the following 3 projects for funding to the Redevelopment Commission for a total of $30,000. And these are the Bloomington Housing Authority Residents Council requests funds to refurbish 2 playgrounds in the Reverend Butler and Walnut Woods communities. Updates will include border replacement, power washing of current equipment, and installation of new signage and mulch. This is recommended for funding in the amount of $6,410. Second, the Prospect Hill Neighborhood Association requests funds to hire restoration professionals to repair Rose Hill Cemetery headstones and monuments that are too difficult, fragile, or large for volunteers to handle. In addition, restoration professionals will offer a 3-hour public workshop to teach headstone restoration techniques and skills. Recommended funding for this project is $12,590. And finally, the Woodlands Winding Brook HOA requests funds for the first phase of a project to convert an inoperable retention pond into a bioretention area to include stormwater mitigation features, native plantings, and community gathering spaces. And here we recommend funding in the amount of $11,000.
All right, any questions regarding Resolution 23-33?
Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Dealing with the cemetery and such, I don't know if that falls under the hand, or is that under Parks, or is that just under the Public Works? Parks. Okay, that's what I didn't know. So the
Yes.
neighborhood is essentially helping to step up in order to make Rose Hill a little bit
Correct.
better.
They have a long history, the Prospect Hill Neighborhood Association has a long history of doing that, and they have received a number of grants from this grant program over the years to do that. They really use it as a neighborhood park in a lot of ways, so they've taken quite a lot of ownership in that space over time, so yeah. And the Parks Department really does not have the funding to do this kind of stuff on a broad scale, and the professional, especially the professional
Yeah.
services, so.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you get into Rose Hill and you start looking at the monuments, you find there's artistic aspects to them, and, you know, that character of our community that is history that you just kind of walk around in and utilize. So that brings me to the next question in regards to it. As we look at these things, and we've got the Parks Department, the neighborhood associations that are stepping up, how do we increase things like that so we can continue to keep it in the kind of shape it needs to be? Is that where we would have to ask the council to allocate additional dollars to try to take care of some of that?
The cemetery specifically? Yes, I won't speak for Director McDevitt, but that part of Parks' operating budget would be, I guess, increased if they needed more money to help maintain the cemetery, or as Angela's been helping the neighborhoods do things that help, because as Angela said, the cemetery, especially Rose Hill, is a place where people go to walk and do things other than visit loved ones. I think there is that active engagement, but your question is about how do you get increased funding, and it would be through an appropriation.
Funding that comes out in order to, while a cemetery may be a cemetery, it's a quiet place that is utilized by a neighborhood, similar to a park. So when we talk about how we maintain the things that we have, Bloomington's blessed with a phenomenal park system, but there's never enough to maintain. And when you're dealing with the type of monuments and such that we have in Rose Hill, the aspect we're doing it to maintain in that.
Yeah.
may not be in the budget from the park standpoint. Fortunately, we've got a neighborhood that's stepping up to take care of it. But just asking to bring up those questions so that we continue to have that maintenance of our history, heritage, and when you walk through, you're not, okay, it used to be a fountain, or, you know, the family plots that they used to have, and the families took care of them, those families have aged out. And that's, all right. So brings me to the next question. It's a budget question. Redevelopment can't help in this manner without someone coming to us in a fashion that would fall under the ability to, I don't know, which would be this neighborhood grants. When we deal with neighborhood grants, and do we still have CONA active, correct?
Yes,
commu-
correct.
Neighborhood associations. How active are the other neighborhoods in regards to, I don't know, like Crescent Bend or Broadview or McDowell?
How active are they in terms of?
Well, in terms when I see that we've only allocated in our budget, which, you know, budgets are extremely important, the aspect of the 30,000, but when we look at the neighborhoods, whether it be Park Ridge, McDowell, Broadview, Prospect Hill, you know, Maple,
Right.
how does that fall into a budgeting standpoint and then a participation aspect by the different neighbors to make it?
Technically, we have about 63 registered neighborhood associations. Many of those are not currently active. They have been over time, and that has waxed and waned over time. And in terms of projects, things like applying for a grant like this, it's a lot of work, and if you don't have a real active group, it's a hard thing to do. You also have to have a project that you want, you know, to accomplish. So one of the reasons you may remember that I came to you all earlier this year to add some additional types of projects that would be eligible for grant funding. And the reason for that was partly because some neighborhoods don't really have a place where they can do a physical improvement because they don't have public spaces, right? And so we're interested in doing more community building activities, which leadership training, capacity building, things like that, which actually CONA is very well placed to do those kinds of things because they're not just one neighborhood, they cover lots of neighborhoods, and certainly leadership training would be really beneficial for many of them. So I'm hoping that as time goes on and the neighborhoods get a chance to understand that these other opportunities are available, that we'll get some grants that are pertaining to those types of things, because capital improvements sometimes just are not in the cards. Yeah. And the changes that were made this time around, it was far enough into the cycle that there just wasn't time for anybody to catch up to that. I know CONA is interested, so I'm hoping by next year they'll be ready to do something like that.
So literally, they could apply for a grant to do a community building, a block party or something of that nature to
Yeah, or
build
even
that
something more formalized like a leadership training. We could get a professional in who could do a training session, you know, for a Saturday afternoon or something like that, that many neighborhoods could benefit from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Help make that cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
I have a few questions. My first question, I think, is probably a Larry question, or at least a legal question, I think. Maybe it's a John question, which is just, the first whereas clause, you know, makes it clear that this is general fund monies. And so I'm sorry that I don't know this. Maybe we discussed this at the last meeting where you came, but can someone remind me why the RDC has authority to control this money? It seems a little bit odd to me because it's not coming from TIF funding or from our other account.
Yeah, one of the duties of the Redevelopment Commission is also to provide oversight of the hand department specifically. So it's kind of there's historical naming conventions where it was at one time known as the Department of Redevelopment. So it's kind of linked inextricably with the Redevelopment Commission. So you all provide oversight on their budget as well. So that's why you're making this determination.
So this is, yeah, okay. All right, and then my second question is, just because it was a little bit unclear from reading the resolution, are these the only 3 requests that came in, or
We
were there
actually
any
received
ones that
4 applications.
Okay, so there's one that was
And one was not funded.
Okay.
And not recommended for funding.
not
Yeah.
recommended by the TIF funding, and I trust the council and their recommendations. The only other question that I have is, when looking at the recommended funding, the Prospect Hill recommended funding is above what they requested and above actually what they anticipate the total project to be, whereas the recommended funding for the Woodlands Winding Brook project is below what they requested. And I definitely see that you were also making sure that you were allocating all of the available money, but could you maybe talk a little bit about
absolutely.
that?
So the Prospect Hill funding, they had actually two separate possible amounts. The first one was just for headstone restoration, and then they had an additional sort of addendum saying if there's still money left over, depending on who else is applying for funds, we would also like additional funds for to hire a second company that does large monuments. And they asked for $4,000 for that. We knew that they could use more. Since we had more, we thought we would just go ahead and give it to them because it would go to good use, and they could use whatever they could get. The Woodlands Winding Brook, that one was a request for this work on their drainage issues that they're having there. In addition to, they had a whole bunch of other amenities they wanted to add, like benches and picnic tables and things like that. So what we did, the council decided that it was most appropriate for this program to deal with the drainage part of it and those other community things, because this is an HOA and it's public space within their neighborhood, but it's still private property in terms of it belongs to the HOA, that those amenities would not really be open to the public. However, the drainage has a much broader benefit to the community because it drains down water from Spicewood neighborhood drains into their area, water from there drains down into Jackson Creek, so it's a bigger issue. So that was the reasoning for that, yeah. Okay. Deborah, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thanks for
Okay.
summarizing that, just because that was, I'll just note a comment or a discussion that the council had, which was distinguishing public space, publicly owned space, private space, because it's clear within the guidelines of the grant that it's not to be used for private space, and trying to distinguish, as Angela noted, for the HOA in terms of, how to, and so that was certainly a point of discussion.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that actually, and asked for legal advice as well, as to how to define those terms,
Yeah.
so.
That's really helpful. I have one last question, which is, given, are there requirements for these associations when they receive this money for kind of any standards for any company that they hire to do some of the work?
Well, they do have to be vetted through the controller's office, and oftentimes the companies that they're using are already in that have already been vetted. But if they're not, that's something that I will work on with them at that point. But in this circumstance, because it's a project that's really run by the neighborhood, we're letting them do that part of it. We're not doing, and at this scale. There have been times in the past when it's been quite a large project when the city has actually stepped in and said, Hand has to do the procurement, we'll put out bids, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, any other questions on resolution 23-33?
I'm just going to say I really appreciate that this program exists and that the neighborhoods have the chance to engage in this way. I'm especially excited for the new projects that are eligible, and as Angela noted, it wasn't quite in the cycle to get fully into this time, but just to broaden it to really strengthen neighborhoods in a variety of capacities in addition to physical or capital improvements, to really look at opportunities for capacity building and leadership development. So I'm looking forward to next year, and I appreciate the opportunity to have participated this year. Thanks.
All right, any public comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-33.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-33.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I'll second that motion.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right. Next item of business, resolution 23-34, approval of agreement for trades Gateway Art with Weber Group.
Hey everyone, my name is Holly Warren. I'm the Assistant Director for the Arts for the City of Bloomington. Thanks for having me here tonight. So we are requesting the approval of a contract with Weber Fabrication to be the new fabricator for the Trades District 1% for the Art Sculpture. That's meant to go over in the Trades District, kind of northeast of where the Trades District garage is, just across the street from 10th. So we originally had a fabrication contract with another fabricator that was made in 2021, and unfortunately they pulled out of that contract, the original fabricator. So we've spent the past year or so trying to find a new fabricator for this project, and we have finally found that partner in Weber. I'm really confident in this fabricator. They are also the fabricator that did the 1% for the Arts installation in the Trades District garage. They were amazing to work with. The first morning of the install, I was terrified I was going to get a call at 6 a.m. that something would go wrong. It was smooth. It was beautiful. So I'm really excited to work with them. So this contract is for a total of $106,500. This is a little more than the contract we signed with Ignition Arts. So again, Ignition Arts, that contract was negotiated. A lot of the negotiation kind of happened before the pandemic, into the pandemic. We signed the contract, and right about that time is when we started seeing costs for things like the metal and the aluminum and the concrete that will be necessary to fabricate and install this sculpture go up. So that's why you see that cost increase there. With the contract, the way it stands now, we are anticipating a fall installation of this. Along with that installation, the artist for this piece, who is based in Germany, will be coming over. He'll help oversee the final process of that installation, and then we'll have a series of public arts engagement opportunities, both for IU students and the community at large, to maybe even help finish the painting of it, and also they'll have other opportunities to engage it. And again, the overall point of this sculpture is just to help contribute to the overall sense of dynamism of the Trades District. This is a really cool, colorful piece that will light up, and so the idea is this will bring people into the neighborhood and just feel like they can go there, gather, and enjoy this piece, and just make it a funner place. I'm happy to answer any questions about this to my best ability. So,
I just have one question. Talk about maintenance ongoing.
Sure.
And what kind of maintenance there might be for this, and where that cost would be coming from.
So yeah, great question. So generally for a piece like this, like I think where we would most see maintenance is like tagging, right? Everybody loves to tag a piece. And I actually have a $20,000 annual art maintenance budget. It's just a general line, so I generally have funds left over to be able to go do things like this. The first thing that happened after we installed the 4th Street garage piece is somebody graffitied it. When we went and did the final walkthrough with the artist, we were like, and there's a tag. And so we just called everywhere signs, and using that maintenance budget, we were able to take care of it right away.
Also notice part of the as-built that we receive, we require that to have a maintenance plan as well, and also to provide us details with if there is some sort of tagging or anything like that, what's the appropriate paint to use, what's the appropriate way to deal with those. We had to exercise that very quickly, as she noted on the 4th Street garage, because somehow somebody leaned out and tagged immediately as soon as it was, like, I think within a month of it.
It was so soon afterwards.
So.
Yeah. And and to Larry's point, the artist will also provide us with information about the program for the lighting, so we'll be able to access the digital equipment to reset the lighting program. We had to do that a couple of months ago with the Trades District garage sculpture as well. So, and like Larry said, there's a clause in the contract that we can work with the artist up to a certain point of time after the installation. They will call in, like this artist Esteban did. He talked me through pressing buttons, so we can make sure that that gets back to snuff as soon as possible.
We should probably also note that this does not include the lighting, so you guys will see another contract come through just for the specialized lighting for this particular installation. So this is really just the metal fabrication installation of the, what's the actual official name of it?
It's OT 987. Please don't ask me to decide. We call it
sticks or French fries.
Yeah.
Or we call it, I call it chopsticks. It's
Chopsticks.
yeah.
Does anyone have a picture of it?
I've got a.
Just curious, I've seen it, I've seen the rendering and such, and it's really kind of cool. But as you said,
Randy, you asked my question, I was like, can we see what?
Yeah,
it's
let me,
gonna look
I
like?
can, if you give me a minute, I can,
yeah, it's pretty, it's one of those things you look at and it makes you wonder, because it is like pickup sticks and collaboration of, everything. And I always look at these sculptures, these art aspects of our community. It's like what draws things together. And just like in front of the MAC, the Calder, when it was put up, there was not, fanfare. But afterwards, that's what it looks like.
We can.
we can
We'll put
disseminate
this in
this.
minutes,
Yeah.
just so everybody will have this for next time. My apologies for not having that.
So Larry, what's the estimate on how much the lighting will cost?
Yeah, I don't know if we know. Do you have an idea of what the lighting will cost yet?
The lighting is gonna include both the equipment, so that's like the actual LED lights, but also the computers that's gonna run the program and the housing for it, because that does not exist now, and the person who's actually going to program it. So overall, that's $30,000, but we have other sources of income we will be also looking towards, so we can offset the cost. So it's not just one entity that's bearing the entire burden of that cost. And I will say again, acknowledging this means that the overall budget for this project will go over that 90K we were initially planning for the fabrication. But what this extra 30K brings us is a lighting budget, because that was not included in the first fabrication contract. And it also brings us an expert in lighting technology that has not been present up until this point. And I do believe that not having that expert lighting person in the room during the conversations between the artist and the original fabricator are the reasons why that relationship fell apart. Having this additional lighting person in conversation with Weber means that there are people on both sides of the table grounded and understand what physically actually has to happen on the ground to make this thing happen and not light on fire or collapse on top of itself, which is, I think, more where this project was in 2019 when people first started discussing it. So this is just the cost of executing a very good, solid sculpture in the Trades District.
I'm curious a little bit about, because I'm not familiar with the general process of budgeting for public art, and it certainly, I understand that there's a variety of exclusions and clarifications that are listed in the contract, some of what we've discussed, like the lighting plan, the artist fees, utilities, pavers. So I'm just getting a sense of when a budget is established for a project like this, how is that figure determined, and how does that compare with where we are now? Not just for the fabrication. I'm just trying to learn more about budgeting for public art.
That question. So generally what happens is when we do a 1% for the arts project, there is a number at the beginning of, the Bloomington Arts Commission, who is the entity who ultimately chooses the artist in the arts project. We work with the Redevelopment Commission or the Controller's Office to say, okay, of this overall budget, we know we are supposed to get 1% of the city's construction costs for this. Generally, we start with that number, and when we put out a call for artists, we put that bottom line budget in the call. And then the onus is on the artist to give us a budget within, that doesn't go above that amount. My understanding and so generally, going forward, we will always keep to that budget. And we've just brought on an amazing public art 3D light artist to the Bloomington Arts Commission to make sure going forward, when we put calls like this out, we can read the budget and make an actual assessment of, yes, this is enough money, or no, this is not enough money. I don't think that type of expert was on the commission when the choice was made for this artist. So I think that's why you're seeing the budget increase now. But going forward, the idea is before we put out a call, the Bloomington Arts Commission knows how much the budget is going to be, and we make sure with expert opinion that we're choosing the arts project that stays within that budget.
We should also note here, so there were two different projects going on at the same time with this particular art project. So the project review form is obviously with the trades infrastructure because it's going on that portion of it. At the same time, the Dimension Mill was going on, and we use that also to establish the budget for this particular art. So that's an additional was an additional $5.4 million on top of this. So the budget, if you add them together, 7.4 overall here plus the 5.4, you're talking about $130,000 for the art installation. And we also use, just talking as well, just in terms of, we use other funds, what was available to commission the artist so that he could give us the design and kind of work with that after it was selected by the public. So we try to be as creative as possible about getting the best possible projects, even if it doesn't totally match up to the 1-to-1, 1%.
Thank you.
So between the two trades district and the dimension mill, we literally are close to the budget that we have at the present moment.
Depending on what the lighting actually comes in at, we'll be fairly close. I mean, and certainly, yeah.
Statutory, the obligation accordingly. So within our constraints there. And then I have to ask, help me out exactly where it's going in the trades district, so I'm aware.
It's strictly the entrance, so if you're coming, Holly, I don't want to step in.
So basically, it's kind of there's a platform there's the vacant plot of grassy land. So on the very far south side of that, there is a place that's kind of tiered, and there's some seating there.
Yep.
That it's going, and I think there are 2 tiers of grass plots. The installation will go on the top grass plot.
Okay, so it'll be right centered into the middle of the trades district,
Correct.
whatever we build around with the dimension.
Yeah, it's kind of the entrance to it, but yeah, that's exactly right.
So
Yeah. It'll be visible from the entire trade
Yeah,
district.
and I think it's literally called a gateway.
Yes,
It's
that's
a
right.
gateway, so, yeah.
Wonderful.
Will it be kind of interactive with the public, or will it, I don't have a sense, I mean, it's metal fabrication, so I assume it's pretty sturdy, but you've got the lighting. And I'm just trying to get a sense of you mentioned tagging earlier, but is it something that kids are gonna climb and hang on? I mean, I'm not saying it's a playground, I'm just saying in terms of safety and, other things.
It could always happen. This is just something that we acknowledge we can't control, and we're not going to fence it off, but I think this is, we can't. Yeah, we're in the final stages of installing a sculpture by a local artist in the Rogers family park, the old goat farm, and that was when we discussed that installation with the artist, we were like, look, we can't control what kids are going to do with this, when you're not here. They could climb on it. This is just a thing that we're prepared for. But
that's also part of the negotiation we have with any of the contractors, particularly with the electrical elements, making sure those are completely secured. The kids can't hurt themselves. Obviously, though, we have installations of art that present unique challenges, whether it's the table and chairs near the farmer's market or the winding river around the whatever it's called, yes, outside of City Hall. So there are always elements of that, and that's why we make sure we cover sufficient insurance to make sure that we're covered against any liability from that regard.
When you walk through 3rd Street Park and you see 2 young men up in the fountain.
No, I was just gonna ask, on the placement choice of the art, what was consideration given to making sure that it doesn't impede the marketability of any of those?
Yeah, it's on that plaza area. So what's directly under that plaza area is actually a specialized drainage system. So it's actually not a non-buildable part of the trades district. This is not like we're building on a plot of land that we could theoretically build a building on top of. This was kind of an innovative storm drainage system that we put under there and made sure it had the ability to withstand the actual sculpture and where it's going to be placed, but it's not a buildable portion.
Well, when we were talking about in the middle of the grassy field, I'm thinking,
Not in the middle of the grassy field.
that could definitely take away some ability to market maybe some of that. Okay, perfect. Any other questions from commissioners? Any public comment? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-34.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-34 as presented.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Resolution passes.
Last quick question.
Yeah.
What kind of time frame do we think we're gonna get into to be able to see this happening?
October.
October.
Yeah, once the contract is all signed, I'm going to have the artist and the fabricator work together to plan when the artist is actually going to be here. He'll be on site in their studio doing some of the final painting. Then we'll transfer it here in October, and we'll do a bunch of public engagement activities. We'll make sure you all have those dates. Should be really exciting. We try to make these installation celebrations really dynamic and exciting for everyone. I also just want to thank everybody again for approving our use of the 4th Street Garage storefront and invite you all. We're having an artist party there tomorrow evening, so it will be open from 7 to 9 p.m. This is a great initiative my colleague Chaz Modinger has put together just to allow young artists in the community to get together and network, but we also like to invite others to see our artist community, see the kind of art they're making. This is also if you just need an artist for something. I had a friend who was at this party last time and she found the person who's going to play at her wedding. So just if you're free tomorrow night from 7 to 9, please stop by the storefront and see what the amazing artists of our community are up to. And thanks,
thank
yeah.
you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, next item of business, resolution 23-35, agreement with Presidio for electronic door access, updates to the Showers Business Plaza. If you'd like to speak regarding this.
I can speak here regarding this. So last time we talked about we're installing fiber in Showers West, or what used to be the CFC Showers Business Plaza, which you all purchased as part of the new public safety facilities. This is specifically geared towards making sure that there are already existing over there electronic door access similar to what's on City Hall, where we have our badges, but it does require reprogramming. And to reprogram that, there are 2 steps. One is the actual reprogramming of it, and then one is actually buying a license for each door that's operable. And so this kind of combines those 2 parts. Presidio is the vendor for that. They are going to take and reprogram the control unit for us to make it in line with City Hall's badges so that we could quickly and easily have one unified system and issue those badges to tenants. And then the second part of it is we'll have licenses to cover all those access doors. I think the access, just to be clear, the licenses that we're purchasing, you have to purchase in a bulk package. Once you go past a certain number, the next number is 64 for whatever reason, so we had to buy 64 licenses, even though we won't use all those for showers. This is coming out of the bond, though, just to be clear. This is coming to the RDCO, obviously, because this is your building and we want to make sure that you approve it.
All right, wonderful. Any questions?
So just the reason why Presidio was chosen is that they're the current vendor, and so it's just using the current vendor and...
Their current vendor and its proprietary software and equipment.
So there's no real, yeah, okay, great.
Limited choices.
It would be exorbitantly expensive to replace all of the equipment and go with somebody else.
Exactly, so it just makes a lot of sense to do this, and so, and it's
All
cheaper.
right, any other questions from commissioners?
No question. One comment I have to throw in. As long as we're talking about doors and showers, let's always be cognizant of the fact that at some point we'd like to have a door to Showers West and a door through the county.
That's great.
Some point in the future. So.
I'll continue to pass that along.
Randy, we accept charitable donations. And I'm sure if you would like to make a contribution to that project, I'd be happy to get your receipt for that contribution.
As I knew you would.
Perfect.
It is
Appreciate it.
so that's nice.
All right, any public comment regarding resolution 23-35? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Deborah Myerson, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-35, agreement with Presidio for electronic door access updates.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Same sign? Nope. All right, moving on. Next item of business, I mentioned that I would provide an update for the Hopewell Development Owners Rep and the status of that. So I just wanted to just give a quick update here, but there are 5 vendors that were interviewed and 2 were shortlisted. That was Veritas and U3 Advisors. The scheduled interview for those last 2 happened on April 5th or April 6th. And the selection committee consists of Mick Renheisen, John West, Val Pena, Jeff Underwood, Alex Crowley, John Zodi, Deb Kuntz, never can say that name right, and myself. And then after the two finalists were interviewed based on consistent questions that were posed ahead of time, no decision was made on the final recommendation, but additional questions were posed and references are currently being checked. The selection committee is working on scheduling a date to review the final information that was requested and review the reference checks and to make a recommendation. And that meeting's not been scheduled yet. The hope would be that it would be presented to the RDC in early May for approval. Anybody have any questions on the status of that? Go ahead.
I thought that Doris Sims was on that committee. She's not. Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Doris is on the capital improvements
Yes, I know
board,
that.
but she's not on this.
Okay, I guess she was put on a different thing then. Okay.
Yeah, she was not on the development owners rep committee.
Who's
But
somebody from the capital improvements that's represented on that?
Yeah, both.
Mick
Yes.
and
Okay.
Dollar Pena. Mm-hmm.
And John.
John
yeah.
West, that's true, that's correct.
It's just me and Doris who are on that board, but not on the this selection committee.
So hopefully more to come. The other thing that I wanted to just mention, you had mentioned that you won't be here on the 15th. I will not either. So just a heads up that we'll have to have the rest of everyone to show up potentially.
We can reach out to them ahead of time and
Okay.
then verify, and if we need to move the meeting to some other time or consolidate business, we'll do that.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to give it enough advance notice, because when I saw your notice, I was thinking, oh gosh, I'm not gonna be here either.
While we're on the topic of calendar, the next meeting, like the two Mondays afterwards is Memorial Day, so will we be meeting on Tuesday instead?
So that would be, Memorial Day is usually the third Monday of the month there, so we only meet the first two Mondays in the month. Let me look at the calendar though. Am I
First and
totally
third.
wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
First and third.
What did I say?
First and second.
Thank you. Yeah, so we would,
actually, the 20th is the 5th Monday, so we don't need to meet.
that's
'Cause-
right, yeah, the
I
29th
was
wouldn't have a meeting,
confused.
but we would have one scheduled then for June 5th would be the next one. It'd be June 5th, June 19th.
Did you want to mention the RFI responses for blocks 8, 9, and 10 and the review of those that the committee's
we can
doing?
mention that.
Sure. So the same committee will review, we got some responses back for the RFI for Hopewell. We got 3 responses back. We are evaluating those to see what they are proposing and to what degree they responded with the necessary requirements. So the committee that President Canarney mentioned will be reviewing those. We're trying to get dates set up to do that as well, so we'll keep you all updated. But we did encouraged at the responses we got. We still need to go through them to see kind of how they met the mark on how much of the area, the blocks, the 8, 9, and 10, they would propose to develop on or not, and whether they got all the necessary materials back to us. So we'll keep you updated there.
Quick question, actually 3 questions
Mhm.
regards to Hopewell. One, we getting from local,
I'm sorry.
did we get any proposals from
Yeah,
local
we did.
local interests?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yep.
That's one. 2, because of the aspect of reading the proposal and such, it's up to whoever it is to tear all that down. Did we ever acquire any cost aspects of actually tearing down those portions from from anyone? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but the redevelopment has taken on the aspect of overseeing and seeing those existing buildings, and from the RFP, whatever someone chose to do, they could choose to keep the one Triana looked at from the art standpoint, or, yeah, the brutalist, the 714 Quaalude building, yeah, but the others are to be tore down.
Yeah. That's the idea.
Did we ever entertain any cost that we as a group, city, RDC, would get rid of those, so the cost didn't go into the housing aspect that we're looking at? I'm just curious.
I was gonna say, we did look into that. We got estimates. I don't think we formally reached out for bids though, as I recall.
Not on the
But what we did
demolition
ask for is some rough estimates about what we think the ballpark it would have cost, and it was pretty substantial. I don't have those exact figures, but we did inquire about that. IU Health wasn't exactly interested in providing demolition for those particular properties.
Well, the reason I asked that question is the fact that that contractor that's tore down has all of the equipment there at the present moment, whether it be, and by the time we get to a point of awarding something from an RFP, those individuals may be gone, and that may be the most cost-effective way, and it's a little blighted there if we're gonna end up holding on to it for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what this RFI process was kind of to suss out a little bit, which is just to see what responses we got, whether it work with the pro formas, what kind of projects we could potentially get, and then, you know, kind of deal with our realities there. I know Deb is on the call. If Deb, if you want to add some further information to this conversation, I'm happy to.
Yeah. I'm in the car right now, so you're catching me in the car here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we did actually talk to Renison is the demolition contractor that's working for IU Health. And we did reach out to them, as Larry indicated, to get just some general estimates and kind of get an order of magnitude. And when we presented that to, you know, to the administration, I think the feeling was, let's not invest any more city dollars into this right now. Let's look at what that development's going to be, what it's going to take the developers to do that, and look at that holistically. So that's our next step with the RFI responses on 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, so basically we're in that pattern of seeing what's out there first, and we're looking at getting a response time back within, what, the next 60 days, 90 days?
For the.
Well, we just,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
we just got three proposals back on those areas. So the selection team has been identified, which I know you'll have representation as well. And so in that evaluation, the determination of how and what the demolition will be, it will come out in one of those proposals. We may not have a valid proposal. That's the other question. Are any of them valid? And so, but that's what we're still trying to. There's some that look valid. It's just a matter of, is it the right deal for the city?
That's what we were talking about with the.
Okay.
Right. And by the way, I am not driving. I'm in the passengers.
Wait for the airbag. Okay, last question in regards to it and the Hopewell aspect of it. How, looking at the diagram based upon the CBIC and the redevelopment, how does that work exactly? Is the Capital Improvements Board making the determination and coming to the redevelopment? Does the redevelopment, how's it work? Because I saw the way the diagrams were, which is fine. I just had a question in regards to how that was, because, you know.
The way the diagrams are currently set up, so it anticipates that the RDC is going to continue to own the land and have responsibilities for that. So what the CICB would be doing is kind of compiling their recommendations, best practices, gathering that information, kind of liaising with the project and making sure, coordinating with people like Deb and any contractors we have, and then presenting that information to you all for your approval on what to move forward with in those projects. So they would be one body in that process. CICB also is, you know, the reason why there's so many lines on that diagram that you're referencing, and I'll ask about if we can include that just to foster the conversation so everybody is aware of it going forward in the minutes. But the diagram itself also has oversight on budget, similar to the RDC. You know, where there's appointing authority from both city council and the mayor's office of the administration. There's an additional layer for that particular nonprofit where the city council also has to approve their annual budget, which is a little bit different than the way the RDC currently works by statute. So there are a couple of mechanisms there where that's why you're seeing the interlaced relationships there, which is the RDC ultimately does have to vote and give approval for whatever happens to that land, either way, regardless. Whether that would be to, you know, for instance, if it was ever to transfer into a land trust, you know, ultimately that decision is yours to make. There'd be recommendations from the office of the mayor, input from the legislature, and also input from the nonprofit, but you'd all have to vote on that.
But, and from a funding standpoint, essentially, CBCI oversees, they bring something to the redevelopment then has a dollar cap accordingly. And then if it exceeds 5 million, then it goes to council?
So that's just by statute, the way that property purchases work by statute for the RDC. So anything that's over 5 million or has a contract that's longer than a 3-year purchase agreement. So for instance, the IU Health agreement fits both of those. It's over 5 million and it went longer than 3 years. That by statute has to be approved by city council. So that has to get taken to them. ahead of time. So that's kind of where that's mirroring that process, and just to reflect again, the RDC owns it, therefore you'd have to follow the statute there.
So that the RDC they'll own it at the present moment until there's a transfer accordingly. CBCI just does recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we bought the hospital site yet?
It depends what you mean by bought. If you mean close, no. So we have the main hospital site, they're still doing demolition on. And under the purchase agreement, they have to give us kind of a development ready kind of site, a clean site, so to speak. And there are stipulations about that, about removing certain piers and all that stuff that they're still obviously completing. They've knocked down a bulk of the large hospital. I think they're almost completely done with that. You'll see some heaps of scrap metal that they're kind of dealing with and recycling and all that stuff. Then they also have a drainage plan that they have to comply with. They technically have to plant grass there and make sure that there's no dangerous runoff or a situation that might cause damage to any other property, essentially, is kind of where that's going to focus on. At that point, they're supposed to notify us just in the way this would work, and then we have an additional inspection period of 45 days for that main site. And then once we sign off that the compaction meets the standards that we all agreed on, that they have closed out, or at least sufficiently, we've come to some agreement about their lingering permits for drainage and runoff and all that stuff, then we can sign off and we then proceed to close on that final parcel. So there's some conditions precedent to that before that's going to happen. We anticipate, they just have to do it under contract before December 31st, 2023. So that's the hard deadline we're up against, that's the transfer deadline no matter what. But of course we're in communication with IU Health and we want to get our ducks in a row for that time. So we've already had conversations with our engineering department about who's going to do those inspections and who can we're starting to have those conversations around the site. But we don't own that main hospital site yet.
Okay. But we've allocated in the budget to acquire that from a dollar standpoint.
So yeah, $6.5 million is the purchase price that was approved by council a long time ago. And then under the purchase agreement, again, there's just a payment schedule for that. So it doesn't line up in the way you might think it would. So we have some discretion in when to issue the final two payments. And there's a hard deadline for the last payment, which I think is 2025. We have to give it by 2025 or 2026. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm happy to give you more specifics about that next time.
Well, like anything, as we approve these purchases of different properties and such, and we know that is in the long-range plan, that we've allocated accordingly, whatever that is, to make sure we're within our budgetary
And this
needs.
is not additional expense for that. This is what was always planned. So we're just following that process from 2018 when we entered the purchase agreement with IU Health.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I think you have an update?
I want to give the commissioners just a quick heads up. So the May 1st meeting, we have to do another public hearing for the home ARP plan. We made a mistake. We put the wrong dates in we said our dates, we had two public meetings. We were only required to have one, but we put 2022 as the public notice date in the public notices instead of 23. So we just have to do one over. We've already submitted the plan and have feedback on what we need to change. We just have to do a new public hearing. They also wanted us to change our language that we used for making accommodations for accessibility and for people with limited English proficiency. So we need to polish up that language and do a new public notice, which we're doing this week, and then we'll have a new hearing on May 1st. So just want to give you that heads up and let you know kind of why, because kind of a formality, but important as far as public records and public notices go. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.
Aye.